Gee, some jerk came out here and tore up my yard. Can't have anything nice around here, I tell you what. Oh yeah, off-roading. Welcome back. We got our Ford Ranger ready to go to our annual Halsey trip. I took a couple days off of work. I need to get my poor S10 Blazer up and running again, because unfortunately, once we got back from the trip from last year, it's just been sitting out in the shed. So I did drag it out a few days ago just to get some fresh gas in it and some air in the tire, but I'll give you a close-up of what we're dealing with, that what needs fixed, what are some of the problems we dealt with last year when we took it to Halsey. And to give you a little bit of background, we went out there, it's kind of our annual vacation just to have some fun, and that's kind of where all this kicked off. We started filming, and it was just kind of like, you know, it's something fun to do. So I figured, why not share our passions and our fun and our insights. When we were out there, at the time, my father had a little Ford EcoSport, had a little 2-liter Mazda 4-banger in the front. It was all-wheel drive, and all we did to modify it was we put some knobby wheels and tires on it, and I think we did a rear muffler delete, and that was it. So, and it performed okay. I mean, it ultimately doesn't have a low range, but a little 6-speed gearbox, and it got around okay. It kept up with my Blazer. But one of the issues we had with the Blazer was, and let me get the shed open. So one of the problems we'd had with the Blazer last year is I kept having the tires in the front come all the way up in full compression, and the tire was catching on the fender arches. So if you watched near the end of our first Halsey video, you can hear some hammering noises. That's because I was trying to roll the lip of the fender back up with a tire iron. I'll show you here. You can see it was starting to kind of cut into my tread. There's some bigger gashes in here, but looking at these shocks back here, they look like they're leaking oil. I'm guessing I destroyed them. So I have some new ones from Rough Country to put in here that are, I think, set up for a little taller lift than what I got. This has a Rough Country 2.5-inch leveling kit in it, and I think I jacked it up a little farther than I probably should have. So the geometry is a little wonky in the front. There's a lot of negative camber, but it's fine. So I got the Blazer pulled out of the shed. I'll kind of go over a quick list of the mods I've done, you know, going from the front of the vehicle to the back. This is a 1997 Chevy S10 Blazer. It's nothing special. I picked this up from a friend's parents for a few $100. It's a little, you know, rough around the edges. It's kind of perfect for a toy. And ultimately, this kind of became my daily driver for a good number of years. So it's had me at the wheel for a while and still hasn't broke yet. So up front, I put in a V8 swap aluminum radiator just to have a little extra cooling capacity, and ultimately I kind of did a half-ass electric fan mod. This little single 12 isn't quite enough. I'll probably do dual 12s at some point, but for the sake of this trip, it's good enough. On that first Halsey trip, this thing did get hot, so I went full roadkill and just took the hood off and just strapped this baby to the roof rack, and that solved my problem. So as you can see, I have it here. The creme de la creme, the custom hot air intake. This is clearly better than stock because, you know, I got the little divider and everything. So, and the cheapest part store filter you can get your hands on. It's great for performance. Going farther back, I got a set of stainless headers on this thing. They were like $100 off eBay. Super nice, direct bolt in. They match perfectly where the old exhaust system was. And this truck ultimately got a muffler and cat delete. We just did a 2-into-1 with a downpipe. Now, the muffler's all rusted out. The $40 part store muffler didn't last, but for the sake of this trip, I'm gonna leave it. I'll fix it eventually. I don't intend to dump a lot of money into this. Now, going to the transmission, and I got some pictures of this as well. I did a Transgo shift kit. This has got the street strip setup in it, and I went more towards the strip version, I guess. There was like a full race, but they said you need like a high stall converter and some other stuff. So this thing, when it had the stock little shorty tires on it, the 1-2 shift would chirp the tires. It was a blast. And as I said, this has a 2.5-inch leveling kit. I did put new leaf springs in the rear. They were all sagged out and broken. I got those from General Spring. And then the leveling kit from Rough Country just gives you a lift shackle in the rear. That's just an evap canister. Don't worry about that. We don't need that where we're going. So, and ultimately, finally, in the back here, I put in a lock right mini locker, or whatever you want to call it, Spartan locker, lunchbox locker, in the rear diff of this, and what a difference. Usually in Halsey, you had to really focus on keeping momentum and being in four-wheel drive at all times, otherwise you just kind of dig a hole. But now, I did most of Halsey last year in two-wheel drive, especially with this wheel tire combo. And this stuff's nothing fancy. These are 31-10-50 Kumo Road Venture ATs. I don't even think they make this particular tread pattern anymore, but I've been really happy with this tire's performance. Kumo's a really nice budget-friendly tire. I haven't really had any issues with them. And then as for the wheels, these are from Speedy Bill. These are just a dirt track wheel. And then these are DOT rated. They do have a safety bead built into them. So these are real nice. They're like 85 bucks each. And then you just got to get the lug-centric lug nuts for them. So since these aren't a hub-centric wheel anymore, this thing runs pretty good. It's fantastic off-road. I just beat the living crap out of it. I will say, for the sake of drivability, this has got that Spider fuel injection nonsense in it. So I took that out and put in, you can just swap it straight over in the much newer solenoid style one. It just bolts directly in place, plugs in, no problems, and it starts and runs nicer. And you can see my EGR delete plate down here, which was actually rather genius. So what I did, there was 2 options available to me to put a tachometer in this thing, because I'm a hot rodder and I like to know my engine RPM. You could either swap out your gauge cluster with one that has the tach in it, and supposedly it works, but then I'm putting in a different gauge cluster from a different truck and the mileage wouldn't match up. I wasn't into that, so I went ahead and put in an aftermarket one, and it's great. All you got to do is you tap into your coil wire over here. Where's the coil at? So I just got a wire tapped in here, but then I still needed key on power that was fused, so I just stole the power wire off the EGR valve. That worked great. So I just got a little spade connector disconnected, but haven't had any issues. We did a couple drag races up the hill climb down at Halsey, and that little EcoSport, it couldn't keep up with this. This is a full-blown SUV against a little city car that's got some knobby tires on it. So I think the Ranger is definitely going to put this Blazer in its place. Straight out of the factory, that Ranger probably makes, I think it's like 50, 60 more horsepower than this thing does. As you may know, I'm not afraid to trade paint. I don't think the owner of that Ranger would really appreciate that. So, sometimes you got to fight dirty to win. Well, unfortunately, one of the issues that's always plagued me on this S10 is because I daily drove it, I drove this on gravel roads quite a bit. I got a piece of metal here in my sidewall, and it keeps making the tire go flat. It's a real pain in the ass. So I'll probably, because this is so far into the sidewall, a patch probably wouldn't hold. The sidewall will flex too much to make it work. So what I'm probably going to do is just pull this out, put a plug in it, and hopefully that'll seal this tire. Now, this being an off-road vehicle, I'll probably just leave it on the rear as a drive tire. I'll probably never use it as a steer tire for the sake of safety. You don't want a steer tire going flat on you, or possibly, failing. I'd rather plug it than try and dismount it and do a patch that I know wouldn't last. One of the problems is because this has a locker in it, it is imperative that both the tires in the rear be the same diameter because of how this particular locker works. So it's kind of one of those, in an off-roader, I love this locker. I wouldn't change it. However, for something to daily drive, it's kind of a pain in the ass. So if it's one of those where if you're going around a corner and you give it just a little too much throttle, it'll lock and then won't allow the tire to freewheel, so then you kind of feel it pushing the front end a little bit. You hear the tire skidding a little bit. Not a fan of that. That's why it's so important that these stay the same diameter. Well, before we start tearing into it, we're gonna make sure she's running right. We're gonna have a little fun. We better make sure four-wheel drive is working. Ready? Ooh, she didn't like that. She didn't like that one bit. There is a little hint of a misfire. I've always had a spark plug wire that likes to melt, so I might need to look into that before we go. But everything seems to be working just fine. definitely get the new shocks in the front. I heard the front tire max out against the fender a couple times again, so which to be expected. Well, I got the Blazer back at the shop to do some work on it. As you can see, what we're dealing with here from the tire coming up, it's coming up past and grabbing the sheet metal and kind of pulling it down, and this makes a knife edge and cuts my tread. To start, I don't want to cut this. I'd rather just kind of roll the lip up and see if that fixes it. Plus, these are torsion bars for the front spring, so I'm just going to give them a few extra cranks to kind of really bring up the spring rate. Hopefully make it stiff enough that it won't make the tire come up so easy. I know the new shocks will probably help with that as well. So what I started on this side is I just took the little chrome strip off. It's just some Phillips head screws, and I have here with me, I got a BFH. That's a biggest, finest hammer, if you didn't know. We're gonna roll this edge up quite a bit, then to finish it off, I got a door skin hammer to kind of smooth out my hammer marks. Well, I got the old shock off, and I expected them to be shot, but kind of hard to show with one hand. But I can move this with my hand, so she's done, big time. So the new ones I got, it looks to me like the shaft diameter is larger and the actual shock body is bigger as well. So I'm hoping that these last a little bit longer with me at the wheel. We'll get them installed. I felt like showing you with one hand wasn't really doing it justice. So, I mean, I can literally do this. The shock was doing no damping. You can hear a little bit of oil still in there, but this baby was done. I'm gonna assume the driver's about the same condition as this one. This will be my last update video on the Blazer before we head on the road to Halsey. So, same deal as the Ranger when we were getting ready. When I got done with everything, it was dark out. So I figured I'd wait till the following day to do an update as to everything I finished. I got the new shocks installed. We did just kind of nothing fancy, just kind of an eyeball alignment. Got it close, set the toe, all that good stuff. I came in with a hammer and a dolly, and the lip that was down here, I got this all rolled up, and I kind of flared the fenders out a little bit for a little extra clearance. That should be about it until we hit the road and head out that way. So, per usual, subscribe for more content in the future. Monster, please sponsor me. You know the deal, usual stuff. Hey, you got anything to say, Shop Dog?